Hey everybody, it's Alex Miller at Capnion. I'd like to give you a bit of a counter economics of AI today. And by this I mean I'm not saying what other people have said is wrong, but rather people have the perspective they have that they can't always pass beyond. And I think a lot of important stuff is getting left out that would lead you to a pretty different conclusion. Trigger warning, there's some dour businessman stuff in this video. You see a lot of skepticism about AI, and I'm going to focus on software engineering, although I think a lot of this is relevant more broadly, to the effect that the quality is bad. If you build something with an AI tool, you're going to regret it. You're not going to be able to handle XYZ issue, and you're going to come crawling back to your employees that you fired or didn't hire, or whatever labor market scenario we're envisioning. And I think this analysis is right in that there are some pretty serious limitations in trying to do everything with AI coding tools right now. But then the reality people are neglecting is that people are really expensive and not all of them are good at their jobs. So a lot of the problems that people point out that businesses might have leaning on AI are problems they already have, and they spend a whole lot more money. So before I come back to this, I'd just like to point out a cultural thing about what I observe on social media and how we hive mind together a little bit. Inevitably, most of the people on social media, and I'm thinking about LinkedIn in particular, are W-2 employees and individual contributors, not management, not entrepreneurs or executives. In that world, we always look at it as a good thing when someone has a really large salary. People appear saying, I got this really large salary, that's awesome. People appear saying, oh, that guy over there, that lady over there, they got a really awesome salary, that's so exciting. And it is certainly exciting. But then you got to remember that for somebody else, it's on the other side of the balance sheet. So, for example, a widely publicized AI story, somebody got poached from OpenAI by Meta with a $200 million compensation package. To Mark Zuckerberg, that's $200 million out the door. So it's a little bit less exciting for him because he had to give something up. If you're Sam Altman, everything is bad and scary about that story because you, A, have lost that employee, and now you're looking around for $200 million if that's what you got to pay people now. So the people that are going to be making these decisions don't necessarily view these large salaries as a happy, positive thing. They view it as bad. And software engineering is an area that has boomed and boomed and boomed. Often very high salaries relative to the rest of the economy. And also, it's pulled in more and more people. And I think in a lot of circles, everybody agrees that quality has gone down. A lot of organizations at some point in the past went through some phase where they were just really desperate to get headcount up and get people in the room that seemed to have appropriate resumes. And as a result, ended up with a lot of people that don't really know what they're doing. And honestly, a lot of these people are kind of scared and overwhelmed with, unfortunately, pretty legitimate imposter syndrome and are kind of struggling to figure out what they're supposed to be doing. If you don't buy this line, you can read about big money lawsuits where somebody paid one of the big consulting firms $10 million to build an application or a website. And it's not easy building an application or website at scale, but it's not cutting edge either. And in the end, the lawsuit is happening because they didn't get the website. And I say all these things to the effect of, well, when you're having people build your software, sometimes you end up with the wrong people and you can spend a whole lot of money and still end up with all those problems you had when you were posting about vibe coding is a disaster. People are going to build these things that crash and burn. Stuff crashes and burns now, and it's not cheap. So the economic reality is, if you can reliably build something that works, you vaguely cross the finish line, even if it turns out to be something like 75% of the quality, well, there's a lot of room for it to be less than 25% of the costs. Here I would also point out, similarly, it's absolutely true you should worry some of these AI companies are subsidizing their prices implicitly with investor money, and down the road they're going to jack them way up and it's going to be a totally different story. People are really expensive. So if you had an AI that could replace this person that got poached by Meta, maybe if you could only pay $100 million for that AI, that's a pretty good deal, even if you only get 75% of the quality. These are the economic realities that drive what's going on. And the point of the exercise here is not to spend infinite money creating a perfect application. Unfortunately, at times, it absolutely makes sense to cut some corners with AI to get it over the finish line if that's really in the offering. These are the economics that are really going to drive what happens. And for this reason, vibe coding phenomena are not going anywhere and are likely to advance and advance.